The Last of Us is a post-apocalyptic, fungal-infected, pandemic simulator video game franchise that was made famous for its gripping episodic storylines, its on-rails emotional action set pieces, its perfect pacing, and its excellently written characters. Also, it's known for having a sequel that had god-awful pacing, was this poorly written mess of a narrative that used its super diverse cast as a shield from criticism. When the trailer first dropped for The Last of Us, honestly, I thought it looked kind of unappealing, which is fair, which isn't like a far stretch for an adaptation of a video game franchise. I mean, the track record for video games being adapted into any other medium, maybe outside of like novelization, it's not great. Television, movies, pretty much up until this point, every single adaptation of a video game has sucked. I think the problem with Hollywood trying to adapt these beloved video game franchises into some other medium is that generally the people that are in charge of these projects, they're not gamers, so they don't A, understand the culture, or B, understand what people actually liked about the video game to begin with. Especially these days, I find that is a very odd trend where it's almost like in vogue within Hollywood to not pay any respect to the source material whatsoever for the IP that you're adapting. Somehow it became a faux pas to try and, actually bring to life a beloved character that everyone knows and loves and is paying money to go and see. Instead, they just want to do their own thing and have their own interpretation of something they don't actually understand to begin with. See, that's the problem. You take something like a big example here, the Joker from The Dark Knight. Jared Leto, Jesus. Has it been that long that I already forgot his name? When Heath Ledger played the Joker, that version of the Joker he plays in that movie, it is Heath Ledger's own creation. It is very different from what the Joker is usually like in any other adaptation of the Joker or any other thing that features the Joker. But at its core, the character was still the Joker, because clearly Heath Ledger or somebody in Heath Ledger's ear was guiding him in the right direction. At its very core, the same tenets that made Joker the Joker were all there. So then when he flips the character on its head and changes all these little things that completely change the dynamic of the character, the character is still the character at its core. So people are like, oh, okay, that's cool. He did something different and new. Whereas if you just like completely reinvent it and make it something else, you're like, well, that's just your thing now. That isn't the thing that I'm paying to see. I'm saying all this to say that right off the rip, the trailer did not impress me. Honestly, I thought it looked like a fan film. Like, I thought it was that bad. I don't know who cut the trailer, but they did a horrible job. But the fact that HBO was producing this, and the fact that the writer/director was the original game's creator, Neil Druckmann, and they also tapped Craig, what was his last name? Craig Mazin, who directed Chernobyl, a miniseries on HBO that I really enjoyed. It gave me hope that this maybe will be the first time in video game history that we actually get like a faithful adaptation that's actually good. But I also did have some trepidations, because on the flip side of that, it was also written by Neil Druckmann, the man that made The Last of Us Part 2, which was a soupy puddle of mud being thrown on top of a fire. There were some other concerns I had going into it as well, just mainly some news articles that I had read prior to the release of the series. There was Bella Ramsey, the girl that plays Ellie in the show. She had done an interview where she said that not only did she not play the games, she was straight up just encouraged not to. Circling back to the whole issue of not paying respect to the lore, that was very concerning for me. There was another article that said basically that they were changing a key element to the lore that wouldn't have, completely changed the dynamic of the show, but Neil Druckmann had come out and said that he was changing something pretty significant, race swapping a character for really no discernible reason whatsoever. Warner Brothers allegedly trying to control the narrative around the show through social media censorship. I assumed the show was going to be this trite, one note, filled with cliches, overly woke nonsense that was designed to check off diversity boxes and boost ESG scores as compared to something that was designed to be consumed by humans. And even though this show does check some of those boxes, I am thankful to say that this first episode was actually pretty great. The best part of the show by far was Bella Ramsey's performance as Ellie. Perhaps I should cut her some slack for not actually playing the video games because, I mean, her portrayal of Ellie was spot on. I mean, if you played the games, I feel like everything down to her mannerisms, her speech patterns, like it was all very much Ellie. Like if you would have told me that she was the voice actor for Ellie originally in the video games, I probably would have believed you. Until I did the math and realized she was probably like 4 years old when those games came out. So maybe not. All right, never mind. I take that back. Though it was brief, I think the best part of this episode not only was just Ellie, but her interactions with Joel. I think them two playing off each other, like I felt like I was watching extended versions of the cutscenes from the game. And episode 1 kind of just was that. It was like the first 30 minutes of the first video game, expanded upon quite a bit, which we'll get into a bit later. And honestly, I'm not complaining about that. A lot of the dialogue seemed to be pulled directly from the video game, which was like kind of cool to see on screen. I think Pedro Pascal as Joel was okay. I'll go with good. I'll say he was good. I have nothing bad to say about him. I think Pedro Pascal is a good actor, and on screen, he seemed like Pedro Pascal being a good actor. I'm not sure if he's a good Joel yet. I think Joel is a character that really kind of has an arc and develops over time. So it would be unfair for me to make any kind of criticism at this point. I would have to give it like a few episodes for him to really like sink into the character and see how he settles. He definitely looked like Joel, I will give him that. But as I mentioned, when he was on screen with Ellie, his performance really did start to shine through. So it gave me glimpses of hope for where their interactions and where he is going to take Joel moving forward. I think casting on the show as a whole was like excellent. It was so well casted, this whole series, or at least this whole episode rather. Meryl Danbridge, who reprises her role, she actually did the voice acting and the mocap animation in the game for the character of Marlene. I thought, again, her reprising her role, I mean, obviously it's the same person, so I mean that was like pretty spot on. Anna Torv's portrayal as Tess I thought was really good. They gave her like some extra little kind of character building bits towards the beginning, like right before they set off on their journey, that I thought added a lot to the character that probably was kind of needed when you're taking a video game and adapting it into this narrative format. And even Joel's race swap daughter, I thought, killed it. She did a really good job. I guess from here on out, there's going to be spoiler talk. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it and come back here. So even though we only spend a little bit of time with Joel's daughter, Sarah, which she did get a lot more time than the character does in the actual video game, I think she did a really good job. Like that death scene, I really actually did kind of feel for her. She felt like a real human. She felt like a real character. And I think it was really smart of the showrunners and the writers to like extend her as a character, because I think if we would have just followed the pacing of the game, then the impact of her death wouldn't have meant as much. But I think having a little more time with her and getting to live with her a little bit, it really did help add to the impact of her death. When we get that time jump into 2023, we get like a 20-year time jump. I think they did a really good job, like right off the bat, of world building with the few like first scenes we get. I think the overgrown nature of the set design was pretty spot on. Like it seemed like I haven't played The Last of Us Part 1 in quite a while, but I mean, from what I remember, it seemed like a lot of the locations were just like ripped directly out of the video game. We get a couple of scenes with Joel, one of him selling drugs, which I believe was a hydrocodone, as well as like him. There was part of the test scene where like, the guy is like clearly scared of Joel. Joel actually wasn't in the scene, but it was a character building scene for Joel. And it's like things like that, I think, did a really, really good job of setting up the post-apocalyptic that we currently live in, the post-apocalyptic world that we currently live in, sorry. It sets up like that everything is very cold and brutal. Everything seemed very, very detached from our current version of reality. Another smart change I thought was them showing Joel selling drugs to the city guard, whatever you want to call them, police officer, I guess, whatever it is. Because then setting up later when he has to kill the guard when they're trying to escape, like it makes that death again more impactful, just like it did with his daughter. So like I thought that was another little smart narrative thing that they added in here as compared to the video game, where in the video game it was just a random guard and it didn't really mean anything. And it sets up Joel as this man of loose morals who's really willing to do anything it takes to survive at the expense of others, even if he has to. Like he's not necessarily like this do-good hero. He has shades of gray to him. He's probably done a lot of really messed up things to people, and probably including murder. But he does whatever he needs to do to protect himself and the ones he loves. But he's also a very shut down man, so he doesn't love a lot of people, except for Tess at this point, I suppose. To me, this first episode was, more importantly than anything, faithful to the video game franchise this thing was based on. I thought characters, the casting, who they cast as the characters was spot on. I thought performances were spot on. I thought the writing for the most part was really, really fantastic. And all of that, I think, it basically took all the strongest attributes of the original video game franchise, all those narrative, storytelling, character building, world building attributes, and really paid the most attention to those and emphasized those, which I think was a really, really smart choice. But if this is the pilot episode, you could equate this to the mandatory tutorial that you have to go through at the beginning of every video game for some goddamn reason. But there is a possibility that this thing could take a left turn in episode 2. I am going to keep my fingers crossed because I really hope that it doesn't. Did anyone notice the plane scene, by the way? I just remembered that. That was really strange. So when they're in the car and they're doing the car chase scene going through the city, basically in the video game, there's a point where they're supposed to get split up. So like they're in a car and the car gets hit by another car. Everyone in their car gets knocked out. Everyone wakes up. Joel wakes up. His daughter's hurt. She can't walk. And then he gets separated from his brother, which leads to Sarah's death, etc., etc. In the show, basically a plane just flies into the ground like a commercial airliner. I don't know if any of the writers were alive during 9/11, but that should have caused way more death and destruction. I have no idea why they swapped that for an airplane. That was so stupid and unrealistic. Like, it's just really stuck out like a sore thumb to me. That was like some Man of Steel level destruction happening for no goddamn reason. Or at least that's what it should have been. But there wasn't any. It was just a plane hit the ground, big digital explosion in the background that was clearly CGI'd in. Who cares? Just keep moving. It made no gosh darn sense to me. But whatever. I give this show a pretty good out of 10.